Board of County Commissioners. Today's date is July 19th, 2022. It's 11 a.m. and are ready to get started. Today, Commissioner Mudge is out of the office, so we do have a quorum with Commissioner Fiedler and myself. So with that, if you will all please silence your cell phones and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and a brief moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you all very much. All right, thank you so much for putting together our agenda today, Tim, and I wanted to see if there's anything that needs to be adjusted on the agenda before we begin. Commissioner Fiedler, do you have any adjustments with the agenda?
Nothing.
Tim or Claire, is there anything that needs to be adjusted? Okay. All right, so with that, I will move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Oh, aye.
Sorry. All right. Community informational items, Commissioner Fiedler?
Nothing.
None from me today either. And so we will move on. I do not have clarifications today. Any clarifications? Nope. All right. Public comments on items not on the agenda. Citizens wishing to speak on items not listed on our agenda can send a message in the chat section or raise your hand on the Zoom. If you're in the room, please raise your hand and we will call on you in order to issue public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes. If any action is required from public comments that are received today, the board will give direction to staff to proceed with that action item. All right. So we have a couple people with us for public comment today. Christy, do you mind if I take comments first? Okay. Jeremiah Lloyd, if you'll please state your name for us for the record, and then you are welcome to start for 3 minutes.
My name is Jeremiah Lloyd. I live in West Park, and my question is, I have a couple of questions actually. One is regarding to the fire mitigation. The other one is regarding to the proposed middle school being placed in Harrison Field. My question for the fire mitigation is it going to be a continuous yearly thing, or are you guys planning a one and done type thing, which doesn't make a lot of sense because of the actual cyclic nature of nature itself? And for the Harrison Field item, would it make more sense to turn Harrison Field into a dog park / community area where there is a recycling center for the people of West Park and actually able to be more utilized for recreation of the people than a brand new building where the old building was so poorly maintained that it is on the verge of being rebuilt?
Sure. Are those your only comments for today?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for bringing those comments to us. Tim, do you have anything to respond to with regards to fire mitigation?
Sure, I can. Jeremiah, I'm Bergman. I'm the county manager. So last week, the Board of County Commissioners approved the local wildfire protection plan. So in that, it lays out which will be, once we have all the final signatures and everything, we make it ADA compliant. It'll be on our website and sent out, so you can read that and look at that, where you'll see mapping of areas that are of higher interest for county properties and like the wildland urban interface to do fuel mitigation work on. It is not a one and done. This year we did receive funding, and we also just received another $500,000 grant to continue this work. So it won't be one and done, but this summer the work being done is on County Road 4, Community Field, and then there's areas on the CMC campus, and then some Newmont properties that all 3 property owners have joined together to work on fuel mitigation that surround the city. And then also the county has purchased an air burner should be delivered in October, and that will be located up at the landfill. So that property owner can have a quicker and easier way to dispose of slash and a safer way to do it. And then the slash that people bring to the landfill will not be taking up space in our landfill.
So you should see more information coming on that in particular, to protect that urban wildfire interface in particular with neighborhoods like West Park and those outlying neighborhoods down County Road 17 and Mountain View. So that work is coming and will continue for sure. But thank you for coming to ask that question. As far as the school building goes and Harrison Field goes, we are incorporating Harrison Field as part of our recreation master planning process, or open space plan, our pros plan. And then we'll take appropriate action from what happens with that pros plan. At this point, the county still owns that property, and we have not had discussions with the school district as of recently to exchange that property for new construction to be added on to the elementary school. But I would highly encourage you to reach out to the school district for more information on their master plan, and what they plan to do with that elementary school going forward.
Sorry, if I just quickly add to that, I think the school board's meeting on Monday, August 8th at 6:30, and they'll be discussing the plans for the intermediate school.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Jeremiah. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Christy, if you would like to go next.
Sure. So this is, I want to be candid. This is a personal public comment. This is not a professional public comment. I was very dismayed to see the sheriff's department do a dog canine demonstration in the 4th of July parade. I find it problematic on multiple levels. At the first level, public safety, they had trouble the first time they did it. They had trouble getting the dogs back on leash. There's been multiple dog at large attacks in our community, and so displaying a vicious dog and telling children at a parade to not move and to stand. Am I too close to the
No,
camera?
no, you're totally fine. I just want to make sure there wasn't
Yeah.
anybody else.
Is poor practice at best, can lead to community harm at worst. And then there is the whole issue of police brutality is an issue nationwide and has been an issue in our community. And doing a demonstration like this, even if it was not the intention, is a display of aggression to our community members. I know that you guys do not have a whole lot of control over the sheriff's department, but what I do know you have control over is their budget. And so I would make the request that you look to require anti-racism and diversity, equity, and inclusion training in their budget for the next fiscal year. And that you also consider taking away funding for the K-9 unit if they do not do the anti-racism and DEI training. I did send over to Heath a recommendation for a consultant who does this work. They do not specialize in this work for police officers. I'm still looking for someone who does that. And if I find that, I will send it over.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christy. Tim, if you'll just relay those sentiments to Sheriff Speckman.
I've met with him in person.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Christy. We appreciate it.
I'm staying the rest of the day in my professional hat back.
Sounds good. Thanks, Christy. Are there any other public comments? Tim?
The request from a non-verbal citizen to read their statement into the record. The request and statement to the Board of County Commissioners. So the person's name is Jaime. So the statement from Jaime is, I, Jaime, have suffered much. I moved to Leadville May 1st, 2021. I asked county for coordinated entry and transition crisis assistance. I was denied, neglected, and ignored by all agencies, and I filed grievance, and I can prove my rights were violated at Sol Vista and DHS. At which point I asked Sarah for immediate assistance since Lake County has no services and no paraprofessional for disabled community members. She said in a mean way at last meeting that the county was spending its own money to hire someone, but DHS and Sarah are trying to outsource and not hire anyone permanent in Lake County. And Sarah said the county would as a result. I have Sarah, sorry, punctuation. In Lake County, as Sarah said, the county would. As a result, I've almost lost housing, uncured late fees. I'm about to lose internet because no assistance with bills, and I got late fees. I've had no help getting food box to door from food bank, meaning I continue to be severely underweight. Everything I'm mentioning, I already have been made to beg for help, and each time I email Sarah for help, I get neglected, ignored, treated, or as if this disabled community member's transition crisis is not rational or deserves no reply or action to immediate provide ADA services that by law should already be provided and available, not just services to able-bodied community members. Could county have done more? I believe so by hiring paraprofessional to aid me in mobility and travel to complete life tasks that I begged help for. Over a year has passed, and each time I mentioned that I moved here homeless on May 1st and asked for help and was factually ignored, neglected, or denied my ADA legal assistance under Sardi law. All of your offices have ADA coordinator, and at no time did any ADA coordinator adapt service or find any solution. So I remain in transition crisis. And I lived here for over a year and have had address here, making me a citizen of Lake County and factual as of today. This disabled community member is now at risk of losing housing in less than 90 days, losing food stamps, emergency COVID assistance. So when my emergency assistance runs out, I will remain in Leadville but be homeless. Officer Daniel said camping behind cemetery is safe. He will not arrest or kick me out. That's my plan. And to see a psychologist for trauma suffered as a result of no services for disabled in Lake County and no enforcement of ADA laws for disabled already in place at all offices. The only thing I can say is that the county could have done more. DHS asked county attorney as they agreed county has done nothing wrong legally, which is a lie because my ADA rights have been ignored, neglected, and denied for over a year. So county attorney or Sarah or DHS actually went through this. It would mental break all of you.
Thank you very much.
And then I do have a response from DHS leadership, which would be limited in things we can say on individual cases. Lake County Department of Human Services follows all ADA requirements and is monitored carefully by state agencies in the areas. Human Services connect clients and make referrals whenever possible to community resources within the county or the region. When clients either apply or complete redetermination paperwork, we do provide assistance with that process, but we are not able to tell individuals what to put on applications for redeterminations. And we provide as much assistance as we are able to. There are resources available to individuals in Lake County and the region for housing assistance, both in obtaining housing and in
Thank you very much. We had a few more people join us both on the Zoom and in person. Is there anyone else here for public comment before we move on to this portion of our agenda? No? Okay. Yeah.
Commissioner Mudge is not here. I share a office wall with Commissioner Mudge, and I can just personally attest that she has spent hours in person and on the phone with, I don't know if it's Jamie or Hyman, something on this. So I just, since she's not here, I wanted to thank her from that statement that she had given.
Thanks. Okay. Moving on to the next portion of our agenda, moving into new business. Contract with Civic Plus for Audio I to enhance ADA. So we'll hand this over to County Manager Tim Bergman. Tim, do you have any, or I'll just let you walk us through this and what it means for our website.
Sure. So this is just an enhancement that we can add to our website to help with ADA accommodations for people with video or visual or hearing disabilities. So essentially it's something, it'll be thing will be at the bottom of the website, but from there it will have a reader on the website for those who are visually impaired. It will read what is on the website, and those for hearing impaired, for people with for like videos on the website, and that it'll flag areas that we need to do captions and things like that. So it's just another step in making sure that we are accessible to everyone. And it's $3,500 per domain, so one domain for 1 year. It has been reviewed by legal, which will put into a professional services agreement.
Okay. Thank you for doing this for us. I really appreciate it.
Well,
Commissioner Feely, do you have any questions or comments on the scope of work for this?
My only question, and sorry for not thinking about this earlier, is are all our departments like on the single Lake County domain, like the library or airport? Do you have some sort of like semi-independent?
So it takes to the library website. Will this also?
yeah, I don't think it will apply to the library's website, but the library's website is ADA compliant and has a lot of those, has a lot of these enhancements on there already. All county departments, I believe, are listed on our website, and if they do have a separate website like the airport, it will kick to that website. But that's a good point, so I can follow up with the independent websites.
Okay.
Oh, good catch. Great. I don't have any other questions, so I will accept the motion.
I move that we approve the contract with Civic Plus for audio eye to enhance ADA accessibility on the Lake County government website.
Second that. Any further discussion?
None for me.
All right. None. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. Okay. Next we have the discussion and potential adoption of edits to the Lake County Government Employee Handbook regarding overtime standards and eligibility for the Lake County Sheriff's Office employees. It's my understanding that Sheriff Speckman is out of the office on a call or unavailable, so Tim will join us and walk us through this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sure.
Use the PowerPoint.
I don't have it open. But
It's on the screen.
Okay.
thanks, Claire.
Yeah, so the law enforcement is short staffed in town. We had a deputy out sick, so the sheriff is out on the call, so I'll be doing this presentation for him.
Okay.
Yes, please.
No, I
Or
don't.
we enable it. Yeah.
It's frozen now. Okay,
Will you,
share this screen. I'll just. Okay,
okay. So the proposal from the sheriff is to make a change to our employee handbook regarding deputies and when they are eligible for overtime. Currently, deputies work on a 14-day rotation or 14-day schedule. So a 2-week schedule. As the handbook is written right now, deputies must work 86 hours every 14 days to be eligible for overtime. As compared to the rest of county employees who need to work 80 hours per pay period, for a 2-week pay period, to be eligible for overtime. So these are the proposed changes from the sheriff to the handbook, which are permissible under the Fair Labor Standards Act. And then the next slide.
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. I can do it. So there are statutory provisions, federal statutory provisions under 7K that talk about firefighters and law enforcement officers and how their work schedules go and their overtime eligibility. So for a lot of times, for firefighters, when they're actually on 24 hours a day, and part of that is when they're sleeping if they're not interrupted by a call. So that's why there is the extension for them to receive overtime, because part of the time they aren't actually working. However, our deputies are working, and the sheriff has met with HR as well as legal counsel on what can be done. So point being is that the county is eligible to change this if the board agrees to that. Next slide. Very good. So the benefits of this, it can continue with the same work period that the sheriff currently has. So 4 on, 4 off, 3 on, 3 off. And then the deputies are eligible to earn overtime after 80 hours in a 14-day work period. So it is similar to the hours for all other county employees. It is it will for sure assist in retention of our deputies from being coached by neighboring sheriff's offices. There's definitely a benefit for short-term recruitment in offering this benefit that other sheriff's offices don't offer. And it will also just help with wellness, like thinking about work wellness, and then emotional and like social wellness of being able to earn overtime at that rate. So the downfall or the challenge with this is that there will be a budgetary impact, which is why the sheriff would want to present it to you today. He is proposing that this will be temporary until he is more fully staffed with a complement of deputies. And he is also working on scheduling, we're trying to schedule as the cadets will come out of post that they'll schedule people for the 80 hours and then not trying to rack up overtime for everyone. It's just currently just a reality of our staffing situation. So if you look at the first, so there are 2 scenarios here. Will be the names with asterisks next to them are our cadets right now in the academy, and then the other ones are our current active deputies. So if you look at the 2 options, it will be the additional cost for the remainder of this budget year on the impact for overtime and the number of pay periods that are affected. The sheriff is proposing the second scenario, the bottom one, because he wants the cadets to stay on a 40-hour schedule because we are paying for their schooling. And they also did receive raises for going into the academy. So he's proposing that they stay on a 40-hour schedule, and then if as needed to cover for dispatch or other areas, then we can pay them accordingly. But he's planning on just scheduling them for the straight 40 hours for each week, and then estimating what the other deputies would get as for overtime. Then next slide. So obviously, the sheriff's vision is to increase staffing across all departments, but especially for deputies, so that he can change that. He is working more on better scheduling practices and ensuring that there's coverage and overlap with PD during key times, things like that, but also, scheduling towards not having everyone getting overtime every pay period. And then go to the last slide. So these are proposed schedules that he is working on. So you can see the bottom 3 are for 8, 7, and 6 patrol units. So right now, if we look at the bottom one, this is what the coverage would look like. And then where there is overlap between the deputies coming onto their shifts and then off of their shifts. And then also on the the top two are whether we're having deputies work 10 or 11-hour shifts. And then the color coding is where it would overlap with other people on during key times as needed. So if you can go back to slide 6, the sheriff's proposal is to change overtime eligibility for deputies from 86 out to, from being able to earn overtime, having to work 86 or more hours, to changing it to 80 or more hours to be more in line with the rest of county staff. And I don't know if Ally or Chris, if you have anything you want to add? or-
No, just to echo that this is within the county purview. You can make this change because the 86-hour work week is discretionary. It's not required.
And I'll say that pay periods remaining, I think that Sheriff Speckman made this including this current pay period, but you can think of this as 11 pay periods rather than 12, so these numbers will actually be a little bit lower because this payroll has already been processed.
Okay, thanks, Ally.
That's the question, sorry, I missed this. It is the sheriff proposing the bottom one or the top one?
The bottom one, okay. So the three bottom names with the asterisks, those are cadets, and they will stay at 40 hours a week. Unless needed to backfill for something.
Because they'll have to go through their FTO.
Right, once they get out, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
I don't have any questions.
I would say I appreciate the level of work that's done at the 30 now.
Yeah, I do too. I think we asked them to bring back some hard numbers and scheduling scenarios for us, and so I appreciate that coming back to us.
Yeah.
Ally, do you have anything else to share, or Chris, aside from what we've already talked through?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Tim, for. Okay, I don't have any further questions. I guess actually I do have one question. So the next step would be for you to make those adjustments in the handbook.
Correct, and I held off on the last one until Sheriff Speckman had presented this. So next up would just be getting my changes that were approved at the board meeting, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. And then having his changes incorporated too and then recorded.
Okay, so do it all at once. Awesome. Okay. Yes.
One comment on that, just keep in mind, is that if I understood the presentation correctly, that the sheriff is anticipating this to be a temporary solution, not a permanent one forward type of thing. So I'm almost wondering if instead of modifying the handbook overall to release a statement noting that it's not. Otherwise, you need to come back if he does
And then
go
we'll
change
back.
it. That was part of, if
Yeah,
that's,
depending on staffing.
Yeah.
So that's, it could be
yeah.
could be a long time.
I think his intent was that it would be a permanent change, but the staffing levels would be temporary. So that the need for the 86 right now,
Oh,
so like he wants to be a permanent change going forward. But right now, we're gonna have to deal with a little bit of overtime until we get, so the staffing is temporary, but the change is permanent. I think is the way that I understand it.
Okay.
That makes more sense.
yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, that's what the only thing because
Okay.
I hate for you to amend your handbook for something that's only going to last a few months.
Okay. So, we could approve this with that, pending that clarification from Alan. With Sheriff Speckman or what?
I think Ally's right. I only had 5 minutes with the sheriff while he was trying to get up to the call,
Okay,
to do the presentation, but I think Ally is right, and it actually makes more sense based off this presentation, but I'm happy to clarify that as well.
okay. Okay, great. I don't have any other questions then, on this, so. I'd like to,
I move that we approve the edits to the Lake County Government Employee Handbook regarding overtime standards and eligibility for the county sheriff's office.
all right, I'll second that. Any further discussion?
Not for me, again, thanks.
Yeah,
for
thank-
doing that work.
yeah, thank you guys so much.
And again, and especially to help understand the budget implications. So,
All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
I,
Aye. Okay, thank you so much. Next we have special event permits presented by Marla Bond, from the community Community Development Department. So Marla, if you would like to join us, you're welcome to join at the table, or you can stay where you're at. It's up to you. Oh, sorry. Should I skip one? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you were
Never
great.
mind.
Sorry.
We're not to you yet.
We can-
Marla. It's all right. This is the contract with the American Rap Company for the pump track building agreement at Oakland Park. Tim, if you would like to present to us.
Actually,
You should just sit here.
right. So the proposal before you is the contract with American Ramp Company, which builds pump tracks. So at the Lake County Fun Place down by Huckman and the skate park in Baker Field, there used to be a dirt pump track. Cloud City Wheelers have raised money and received GoCo grants to cover pretty much all of the expenses of creating a new asphalt pump track. So the American Ramp Company is the company that builds these things. Anyway,
How much it is?
yeah, it's yeah, I think it's 294.
That's,
I believe it's for $294,000, which is covered by grants from the Cloud City Wheelers.
Actually, sorry, that the contract currently says $253,015.52.
Okay, all right. That's how much.
That's how much.
That's how much. But with this covered with GoCo grant funded by the Cloud City Wheelers. There are still a few pieces of this contract that need to be negotiated out with American Ramp Company. So I'd recommend approving this contract pending final legal review. And this, the down by Baker Field is where the new pump track will go. And it should only take 4, maybe 5 weeks of construction. Ideally, they would be able to start in August when temperatures during the day are consistently above 60 degrees and not below 40 in the evening, because they hand work all of the asphalt that is used. And then, yeah. So my recommendation is to approve it pending final legal review.
I do not have any questions on this.
But I don't know if legal has, if you want.
I'd rather have the opportunity to talk with the folks from the American Ramp Company about the revisions that are needed. But they've been amenable to first round of permissions, and then they send additional documents to review, and those need to be addressed as well. So I don't anticipate that an issue. If we run into some sort of a deal breaker or something, we'll bring it back.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, I don't have any questions on this. Commissioner, do you have any questions on this?
No.
All right. So I will accept the motion.
I move contract with American Rent Company for the pump track build agreement and park pending legal review.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for doing that. Very true. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we're on to you, Marla. Oh. Marla, you can stay there, you can come up. We have a few special event permits in front of us today. We have 3 total permits. We have the Leadville Race Series Trail 100 mountain bike race and 10K run, and the Leadville Race Series Trail 100 run, and the Holiday Moto Experience. So Marla, if you'd like to walk us through each of these, and then we'll approve. We can approve together as a group or individually if we have additional information that we want to put into the permit.
Okay. The Leadville Trail 100 mountain bike race and the Leadville Trail 10K run that take place on August 13th and August 14th consecutively. This has been through several public meetings and as far as oversight. The race series have been very good about anything that's come to light. They've managed to bring forward new methods of managing downtown to help keep some of the competitors, the brewers, from the full focus of downtown by incorporating shuttles.
which has been very nice and very welcome. We find that there are no further points of concern, so bringing it to you for your approval.
I did see on the application itself that it's contingent upon, a couple of conditions, like contracting with the ambulance. Do you receive all of that information prior to the event taking place?
I only received the approval from the relevant agency
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
or concern if there is.
Okay. Sounds good. Commissioner, if you do you have any?
No, I didn't have any other questions.
Okay. I think just for transparency's sake, my husband is participating in the Trail 100 mountain bike race, and I am sitting in the team for the- So it's out there, but I do not have or any team with direction of this permit. So there's that. On the next one, Marla, was the Lego Race Trail 100 run.
So this event takes place August 19th through the 21st. It has followed a very similar process. There have been many meetings and incorporations of all relevant agencies. This one does have a contingency for flaggers, as this is a walking, running, or jogging event. So there is a concern that there is someone making sure that they are safe.
That's like road crossing. and stuff.
Road crossings, as well as, just making sure that any tight areas that they have plenty of visibility.
Okay.
For their protection.
Awesome. The holiday moto experience.
Actually, sorry, I
Oh,
just want to
sorry,
say
go ahead.
another similar comment, as my wife is running the 100 run, but whatever.
Yeah.
No financial or.
Yeah.
It's required that is not your right.
Yeah, I'm. It's just not ready in my life. Okay, great. Holiday moto experience.
This one is one that really does not have to touch, as it has a minimum 100 entrance, and it will be closed to the public.
Okay.
However, it is a new event. There is an alcohol component that will be managed and maintained within the boundaries. It cannot leave the boundaries, and as bikes that are competing are motorized, they are not street legal, so they are asked to maintain the premises rather than remove themselves.
Okay.
For any reason, it does have full ambulance contracts for the entire event. And it does meet with fire and sheriff approval for the event. I did bring it for your approval if you would like. Since it's a new event, I thought perhaps you would want to bless it. Or not.
That'll take place up at the motocross track.
It will. And just a point of knowledge, this is not abnormal at all to have this many people at that racetrack on any given weekend.
Okay, great. I don't have any questions on that. I don't have any questions on any of the permits. Commissioner Fever, do you?
Just one comment on that item 6 about dirt bikes. I mean, maybe all the ones in competition aren't street legal, but I just wonder if 6 should be like slightly edited to say dirt bikes that are not street legal shall remain within the confines. There's some dirt bikes can be made street legal. So I mean, I don't know, someone might just have.
Absolutely,
Good catch.
we can absolutely, it's listed as dirt bikes. I will make that change, just as a point of clarification. No, absolutely relevant. Thank you very much.
Okay, and so number 5, I do see that provided complimentary alcohol may not leave the premises, but it's not allowed during
Right.
hours. Okay.
Right.
Okay. I don't have any questions on that. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. I do really appreciate it. Any other questions or clarifications?
All good.
So I will make a motion that we approve the Leadville Race Series Trail 100 Mountain Bike Race and 10K Run, the Leadville Race Series Trail 100 Run, and the Holiday Lotto Experience Special Event Permits.
Second,
Any further discussion?
Anthony?
Thank you so much for the work that goes into coordinating the referral agencies and getting, making sure that participants and community members are safe during events. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
All right. See no further discussion. All those in favor?
Actually, sorry, if I could
Oh,
just say
yeah.
one, I know you guys work super hard, but like, I think it'd be great if you just continue to try to get these like with more lead time, because
Mhm.
we did have some issues. I know you know all that, but
Yes, the moto experience is very new and they have been very forthright in saying that next year, and they do hope to, they will look at plenty of lead time and perhaps a different time of year.
Yeah.
We encourage to follow that.
And I think Tim has been in contact with the race series to make sure that their event permits come together as a packet. They normally come together as one packet for all events through the entire year. But with change in leadership and management at Lifetime, I think that there's, and they've been dribbling in. So we do appreciate them getting them in and working so hard to do that, but thank you for being on top of that and making sure that next year goes well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
awesome. All those in favor?
I,
Aye. All right, thank you so much, Marla. I appreciate it. Discussion on the status of the Leadville Lake County Regional Housing Authority. This is led by County Manager Bergman. Michael Yearman is with us, who is our consultant for housing. Jackie William is our housing director. So you guys can all.
I guess, I think you
table,
can. Let
or
me
you
just
can
speak
sit
loud
in
enough
front,
into the mic.
whatever you want.
Because the point, yeah, the point of this discussion is to discuss the proposed projected budget for the creation of a regional housing authority. So in your packet, you have the projected budget. It's actually in this packet. And then so right there, you'll have a staff report from Mike and Jackie. And then the latest red line copy of the IGA with the city on the creation of the regional housing authority. I don't know if you guys have a preference. Or you want to talk, or you want to extend on.
Let's, because I know you want to go through the IGA, which is great, but I wanted to give a quick, I might keep this finalized. Because I think it's like, I kind of had a crap moment this week on all of this, because September 1st is now officially the door grant application deadline.
I'm sorry, what's the?
September 1st, it's a letter of intent. And so we have a lot to do to get to that. So I created a real quick presentation on just kind of where we're at on how to get there. And then I wanted to talk through the budget, and then we can get into the IGAs with the previous. So we can do that last. So next slide. We have made substantial.
The next line.
Or if you just hit. So we got the DOLA grant. The object was to get to 6 qualified strategies. To date, we are at, so next slide, we are at 2 that have been adopted. One of those is the county PUD amendment, and the second is the authorizing accessory dwelling units. So the city and county now allow that. And business district. Next slide. This is the big one. So to get to 6, the qualified strategies, all of this pertains to use of public land, creating ways to process through fee waivers, large HAPs, and also a dedicated funding source. The final is a land banking program. All of this is covered by the creation of regional housing. Because of the efforts of the Housing Coalition and the funding that is created through it, that achieves the dedicated funding source that's contained in strategies 3 there. However, the regional housing authority that we're getting to today, the IGA also has the ability to create a additional permanent funding stream. But what's great is that gets it to stick. So there we are, but go to the next slide. We are still working on an additional one with the city, which would get us 7, which is working on their planning and zoning. With their planning and zoning, they've actually made a recommendation to bring forward a formal recommendation on subdivision exemption that would create townhomes and condos. So if you think of a triplex that's built, being able to expeditiously create the subdivision process to allow those. And it's actually really critical when we talk about the dual grant and then the future of selling houses, is that there's some timeliness around how that is done, because the house is actually has to, for a surveyor to do a townhome plan, the house actually has to be built. And it's under contract, just Jackie will have a buyer, right, lined up, she'll get them through loan counseling, they'll be waiting on their loan to close. And so having to do a 3-month subdivision process would be disastrous because of a lot of reasons. So I'm glad that the P&Z and also the mayor seem very excited about this addition to the code. So that would get number 7. And then if you go one more slide, the other 2 that are still out there that we've talked about that I think are easy, that would actually get 9, which is because of the competitiveness of this grant, I would really encourage us. We talked about the commissioners and the council potentially passing a resolution talking about the fact that if you see a project that has affordable housing at 120% of the world, then you would allow it to be expedited and move to the front of the queue. I think it'd be a pretty easy resolution for us to pass and get that qualified strategy. And then the city does allow the development of small square footage rental units, or not rent of units. And so I can work with AM2. I believe you guys allow 600 square feet or less, or 600 or more. So those 2, just by passing the resolution, on that resolution by the city and the county, you would check off the last 2 and we'd be at 9. Why that's important, next slide, is that.
Well, hang on, I mean, I appreciate running through this, because it's good, but I mean, we're not actually deciding or really discussing those today, right?
No, but we will have to discuss them very quickly. So I wanted to go back to the 4 that we're creating, why we decided to go down the path of regional housing authority. Number 1, we looked at the city's housing authority. It wasn't created under a statute, which would allow for additional revenue generation. And as we saw with the site analysis, like the Climax parcel has $8 million in infrastructure needs. We're never going to get there. I shouldn't say never, but that would be a huge hit on both the city and kind of budgets to try to put $8 million in infrastructure in the ground. So this allows this does a couple things. 1, it allows for a countywide board to focus squarely on housing. So you have one board that is continuously seeing this day in and day out. You have a county commissioner, a city council member, staff, and 3 large members that meet monthly to talk about housing and advancing it in the efforts. One huge thing, which is the publicly controlled land development and land banking. That is a big issue, not so much for the county, but it is for the city. The city is a statutory city. They would have to dispose of property, they require a vote. Obviously, that's next to impossible if you're going to have to do a vote to sell affordable housing owner a piece of property. And so this allows that board to control land assets, develop them, and move forward. It also allows you to go after essential housing programs for the community. Down payment assistance being one of the most important ones in the next few years, but also energy assistance, mobile home replacement. There's lots of other programs that, because you have a regional housing authority now, you can apply DOH, CHAPA, and other programming functions to do that and run that through. And the additional revenue funding stream is huge. So the IGA, as contemplated, does allow for a sales tax to be put on the ballot, or a potentially, at this point, which we talk about today, a 1 mil. It creates a dedicated development team for project, which is huge. So as contemplated in the IGA, there is a development committee that would work side by side with Jackie to advance projects like the one that we're going to discuss today. This one actually jumped out at me today when I was actually doing the grant stuff for the Dole grant. Is you guys are in a really unique situation in that any other municipality I've worked with, Crestview, Wide, or even some of the stuff I'm doing in Eastern Plains, the local governments control the utilities. So when I need to do a sewer main extension, I'm working side by side with the city, like the city staff who put forward the application. And this one in particular, you have special districts, and the infrastructure we need to put in under this grant is actually not controlled by either city or county. So what this does is it allows Jack, the future board, that regional housing authority board, to actually work directly with special districts and be an applicant. So it doesn't put the city and the county in an applicant role with the special districts. And it keeps the regional housing authority, which is actually really huge when we start talking about the infrastructure needs. When we're talking about putting in $1.4 million of sewer and water mains. And finally, obviously the administration of housing guidelines. So this is why we're doing this, right? This is regional collaboration. We're not just doing it because it checks the strategies by BOCC, but also sets you up for long-term success by the creation of this. So next slide. So we have kind of this is my I was presenting at a housing conference on Thursday, and a DOH representative said, "You know that's due September 1st, not November 1st." I was like, "What?" So I quickly went to the website and found out that they were right. Of course they were. They don't want their own program. But it's a letter. The letter of intent is different than the actual full application. The letter of intent is a full application though. You have to show that you have adopted or are going to adopt the final qualified strategy, and you will either be selected or they'll deny the opportunity to actually submit a formal application in October and November. What that means though is there's a lot to do between now and September 1st, one of which was setting up a pre-application conference, which we have next week with BOCC and the planning division. There's lots of questions I have, like who can be the applicant, because we have kind of a situation here. We have a situation where we're asking for special districts to do infrastructure that we don't control, who those boundaries applying for. They say it's up to 3 million, but then they haven't seen the letters that ask for 1 million. So what's that really mean? Because we have a 1.4 billion potential ask. Big thing is, and this is a perfect example of when we talked about the tiers and everything, those tiers now no longer matter because any of those funds that touch on those 3 sites, we are now restricted to AMI limits of 140 for sale and 80% now. So your tiers have gone out the window and the community guidelines, and now you have to adopt their tiers. So the perfect example of why it's like why the community guidelines are guidelines. Funds must be used or spent by June 2024, which we'll get into a schedule here in a minute, which because it's going to be for infrastructure is actually timely. And the great news is we came out of the site analysis project and we have a $1.4 million infrastructure project that can create 70 to 80 new units. That's huge. I mean, if we can put 70 to 80 new units on the ground by 2025, you guys have made substantial progress and you have leveraged substantially for grant funding. Next slide. All right, so if you open up your packet, I have these in here so you can see. So there's 3 sites that, so we looked at the 3 sites we had, the Cosmic property, which is 24, Highway 24. The reason that's not being considered is that the private property owner was not comfortable with the 140 AMI. We can certainly revisit that, but I doubt that has changed because he doesn't want to exclude the employees from housing, because as those ever. The second is the Climax, which we saw was an $8 million budget hit. So these 3 infill sites actually kind of hit the sweet spot for the delivery. One, there's only 2 property owners, the school district and the county on the 3 sites. And this can generate up to about 70 to 80 housing units. The site 1 is owned by the school district. Again, when you look at this, the site analysis, it's up to 46 potential units. I actually went to make sure I wasn't insane, that those houses on the hillside up there on the north could actually be achieved and wanted to triple check myself on that this morning. You know, these sites will require some grade work, but certainly can provide valuable housing. One big thing will be is negotiating. The regional housing authority by its creation will have the power to negotiate with the school district on getting that land transferred. Well, I'll get into the budget and why we're actually presenting to them next 2 weeks from now. on why it'd be advantageous for them to consider this, but we'll get there. Next slide is the county site. The county basically owns two sites that look exactly like this, so half blocks. These sites could do up to 19. I would guess because of some of the topography, we're gonna wind up closer to 15 on both those sites. But regardless, it's substantial amount. So this site on 4th Street requires a water main extension. The site on 8th Street requires a sewer main extension. But again, when you add up 15 plus 15 plus, let's call it 45, you're at 75 units, which would be huge for Jackie to get a housing burn going. So next slide, I want to explain something because this is what kept me up to midnight last night on creating a budget well, and it's in your packet. So if you want to flip to the page, it's in your packet, so you don't have to try to read this. But the consultants that did our site analysis plan, thanks. They actually did two things. They actually priced out two things, which is great. One is they did the actual infrastructure, which just this top line is the Gopher grant. This I want to share because this is so important. This is what the developer actually is net. This is more broccoli that the developer eats that gets passed on to an end buyer. This is what it costs to connect each of the houses and build a foundation. So not only is it 365, but then before the builder starts to build, they got to go out to the main and tap it. That's where you're seeing the orange, tap, electric gas distribution, all these extra costs that are going to still be there even after we spend $1.4 million. This though, you reduce the broccoli costs is what I like to call it by half. Now, what made me stay up to midnight is they also have these, and these actually do apply because engineering and design is necessary to do the sewer main, right? We need to design a sewer main, engineer it, design it. So if you go to the next, but I also want to just real quick, and then the last one that's in here that isn't even included, another pass on is taps. So by the time this project potentially comes forward, having another dedicated funding stream where we can work with the developer to eat these two big numbers on each of the sites is huge. So the further we can reduce it, the more we can bake in affordability, but it's not necessary because you will be able to, through this process, I'm comfortable enough that even with those two giant numbers, that adds about a $30,000 to $35,000 hit to each unit. Whereas if you add that in, it's about $50,000 to $60,000. So it adds costs, but it's not insurmountable with just these two costs. It becomes insurmountable if you ask for main extension. Because it's about 60 grand a unit. That's something they have to eat before they even go vertical. So if we go to the actual next slide, I kind of simplified it to what the actual DOLA grant ask. So you can see here that the total ask, the total DOLA grant is 1.3, we'll call it 1.4 just to use round numbers. And what this does is basically prices out, and this is very much a draft. I want to say that I did this at midnight last night, and I haven't met with Paratech again to kind of vet these one more time. But what this does is it gets the land ready for the developer to go out to the mains and go vertical. So everything's in place, all the utilities are in front of the property. They now have to go set meters, they got to have sewer mains. There's still they're still going to do a survey, they're going to have to go through entitlements. But that gets the properties ready to pop out of the ground. When you go through here, so you see that sub costs, and that basically we're right at sitting at $1 million. So we're right at kind of the sweet spot. Obviously, because of construction costs, we have a pretty substantial contingency of 1.39, 193,000. Engineering is very expensive. It's typically 10 to 15% of your total budget. I'm putting in as 10 because I'm including 10% of the contingency. So it's actually 10%. That number is 10% of 1.3, 1.4. This is construction observation, which is going to be required by the special districts to actually inspect the mains when the contractor puts it in. And then you're going to have another 40,000 in administrative expenses. That'd be like hiring another me to come in here and administer all of this process, as well as administer the grant and also start getting you going on some RFQ. What's not included though, which I did include, are two big things. One is gas and electric. The reason I didn't include gas and electric in the proposal is that typically Excel is where your gas and electric here. They don't like to come in until the deep utilities are in. Because of the timing, because of how fast we need to spend the bill money, having them come in on the second phase would actually delay us about 6 months. And because you guys get a lot of snow, that's a building season. So it's better to do that at the time of when the vertical construction is happening. The last one is an environmental phase 1. I'm not sure. Ann, how are you? Do you think we're going to need to do a phase 1?
Wait, you're in the city,
But do you guys, I've never.
No, I don't anticipate in those areas that you will.
Okay.
I don't think so, but.
Yeah, don't commit to that,
Yeah.
because part of it's the timing of the.
Sure. Well, and what you'll see though is that what I am asking, when you see the county match or what I'm proposing, this $100,000 will show up here in just a minute in the match. And the reason for that is because, so if you want to flip, and it's not on the slide, so before we get into no, you're fine. Before we get in there, I wanted to walk you through kind of in here. This is the schedule. So if you flip through your packet, there's a quick schedule in here. And this is aggressive. I think we can get a little bit more aggressive, but this is the reality of what it takes to do a project. I mean, we're talking about going through DOLA from September through basically the end of February. So that's getting a grant and then getting all the contracting and being around spend money. By February, we're able to then get under contract. We're awarded the grant. We're able to get a contract with an engineer. Engineering is going to take about 3 months to get the 3 sites prepared. Then we go out to bid. Hopefully we're out to bid before the spring breaks so that we can start utility work in June. And then you're looking at June through October, basically to get utility work in. Now, you could condense this a little bit if you have a functional regional housing authority, which we will have, right? In that you could start working on the developer RFQ at the same time that your construction is going in the ground. So that we could move this all up about 3 or 4 months. But basically at that point, because now you know you have ready to go lots, you're able to put out a developer RFQ. You want to try to create a 3-month window where you're doing pre-sales and lotteries. For that to happen though, the developer who's selling this actually has to do site plans and unit design for all those sites. So when you're talking like 50 to 70 units, that's a lot of floor plans, a lot of architecture work. So there's a lot of cost there. But they will only build what you pre-sell with it. So there's not going to be in this development model, there's not. Now you could potentially partner with like a LifeTech project and do like a 60% AMI because they typically look for about a 30 unit site. So there are, for instance, maybe you do 2 rental projects on the county parcels, but that's way out there, and that's what the regional housing authority is on to figure out. But what you're looking at here is basically if everything goes great, you're breaking ground in the spring of March 24, and they're ending completion of all this in December 2025. So it is because you have infrastructure needs for this spring, you have a year of just doing nothing but pipes in the ground, which no donor wants to put any months to it. All right. So next slide. So now we're getting into the budget. And I don't know how you want to, maybe why don't you go to the next slide? I'll wrap up the presentation and then you can get into that. So what we have ahead of us is quite aggressive. We're going to be very busy in the next couple of months. So we obviously have the letter of intent due on September 1st. Jackie and I are meeting with Parkville Water, the sanitation district, and the school district in August to talk about this. We do need to hopefully have the IGA and budget approved by and ready for adoption in August. I will say this, we are going to fail miserably if we have an IGA in place by August. We won't be able to go to DOLA because we'll only have 2 qualified strategies and you have to have a minimum of 3, but it's a lot. Finally, in August to actually apply for the grant, if you scroll down just a little bit, you do need, as you know, when applying for grants, you will need resolutions of support as well as the commitment of matching funds. And right now I'm projecting that out at 100,000 from the city and 200 from the county. And when we get into the budget, we'll see a $300,000 number The reason for the 300 from the county as initial grant match is whether or not we might or might not need an environmental phase one. If we do need an environmental phase one and we are basically they were awarded for GOCO funding, we want to do that immediately and not wait for GOCO contracting, because that will add 3 or 4 months, that whole process, and we'll miss a whole digging season on utilities. So this gives some flexibility, and basically what I would say is with this $100,000, if it's not used for that, that's money that can be used for future programming inside the housing. But that's where you'll see when we get to the budget here. So, so any questions on the order grant? I guess it's the first thing. I know it's a lot to digest, but I wanted to kind of.
Well, I guess I do just want to kind of clarify a little bit, like, one, that the county's not trying to circumvent any process or progress that's been made by the current housing authority. We have to go through this process because statutorily we cannot tie ourselves to the other housing authority, correct? Because I think that gets jumbled a lot. I just want to make sure that that's an accurate statement.
Well, my understanding is that the current existing city housing authority is just, it has different powers and authorities, and it's a different statute. And we just need these different entities.
Yeah.
These other things.
So so great question. So the reason for a new regional housing authority is twofold. One, you are correct in the statement that the existing federal housing authority, there's actually 2 statutes that allow, one is a localized housing authority, and then one is a regional housing authority. That one was created under the localized housing authority. A couple key elements that are not allowed that are essential for a functional regional housing authority in the future that allow for this. One is development. One is really the slam banking, holding of public property, etc. While you can do that through that under the city, it's not as flexible as you get under the regional housing authority.
Okay.
The second biggest and most important one is whether or not you guys are going to ever be able to generate additional revenue to support a housing authority. Right now, when we look at the budget, I mean, you basically have a $200,000 regional housing authority budget, which covers staff, and will allow for operating and doing future programming, but it will not be enough to ever really be, besides like a potential grant like this coming again, you're not going to be able to develop property, and that's just the reality. When you look at the Climax site, which is kind of like, in my opinion, the project to get through for housing, that's an $8 million just bite out of an elephant to even start to look at putting housing on that site. So you have some real costs that are at $200,000 a year are going to take a couple centuries before you can do the Climax site. So, I mean, it's a reality. I'm a horrible consultant saying that, but that's the reality of it. So that's why we're considering a regional housing. The second piece, I think, is that, again, going through that list of reasons, is that it also allows right now to change the city housing authority. They have some debt obligations through HUD and some other things that in their own property that would make a transfer to a regional housing authority quite complicated. And finally, because of Tabor and the fact that you could get a Tabor happy person that could legally challenge this, and I'm not your attorney, it could very much risk, though, if you put a ballot initiative, you were successful 2 years from now, a legal challenge on Tabor because you crossed over and that the founding authority was not given taxing authority when it was founded. And by moving those numbers over, you could get a Tabor challenge, which could go up, and you'd have to refund all that money. So it's a lot of gambling to try to accommodate that, and you'd have to pay off the note for HUD.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that risk management aspect for the county, because I think that piece sometimes get lost. It's lost in the narrative. But that risk management is not only important to us as the county as an organization, but to the taxpayers. I appreciate that. I guess my only other question is like in the information that was presented in the slides up to this point, all of those things are included in the regional housing authority incorporation documents. And they're easily checked off by DOLA or pointed to in that document. So DOLA can go through that and say, okay, you check all these boxes.
What I was actually going to suggest, because I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this, is I would, because we're not adopting it today, I would actually suggest that we bring forward when the city and the county are considering this, as well as with the two things we talked about with the expedited review. We bring affordable housing resolutions forward.
Okay.
So that we can just have a clean resolution that documents all the different qualified strategies and how we got there. So that, because you actually I was audited for this investment grant on a project. You actually have to produce the legal mechanism documents. So the DOLA lawyer that actually audits it. So by actually having this really clean and all up front, like we did a good job. We actually made whereas statements in the PUD and the business. So we could do the same thing with this, and it can point to the creation of a regional housing.
Okay.
So I think that's a great, and I'm actually glad sometimes, I know we wanted to adopt this today, but this actually gives us a little bit of breathing room to actually do this right. So it's great.
Okay. And we have time to do this before like August.
Yeah,
It
August.
won't put you in a place where you're rushed.
Yeah.
I mean,
So we're all going on vacation in August.
yes.
No, you're not. I mean,
We have all those bikers. Yeah, I'm just joking.
Yeah. You guys are very athletic. No, we can, again, as long as the city and the county, which I think crossed this last hurdle, which is the budget today. I think, again, I applaud, and I say this, in all honesty, I applaud the city and the BOCC, the council and the BOCC. You guys are tackled in 4 months what is taken, what took. So,
Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to ask Ann if you had any questions or comments about some of the.
Yeah, I do. So I'd love to talk to you about it a little bit, Michael. I am not, and whereas I know it's a really good amendment to reduce the square footage of family homes in the LDC, and it's not my favorite thing to do. And I was hoping for the proclamation that we talked about a lot of the strengths that already exist in the code. There's some here, a public hearing process, and no public hearing. Just some other streamlined efficiencies that we already had, and I was hoping that proclamation idea is still an option, because I'd like to, and I have another idea that is a much heavier lift and something that probably can't be done, but I'm wondering about, have you ever seen within the qualified strategies, is there any merit or credit given to something that's in the works, and that is mobile home parks that are all doing business and wanting to look at something differently for all of those communities, and especially if we had property owners that were willing to look at a different type of zoning other than business for those parks, because they're willing to kind of memorialize those communities versus the existing zoning, and I think that would be a huge victory.
And there's like an other category, right?
But I don't see us getting that over the
Yeah.
finish line in time, so I just didn't know if there's any merit in something that we might be able to be working on.
Right.
And that we have some collaboration on, does that have any merit, or do we have to have it?
and unfortunately, I don't
Just
think
not
it's
check the
not,
box.
it's not gonna check the box in time, but I don't think, that said,
It still needs to be worked
We
on,
should,
something
yeah.
that we'll be talking about, because I think that it's a long range. Really
And-
difficult kind of.
and on the unit size, which is nice, because this is one of the questions, I actually don't even want to ask the question when.
I'd rather do parking. Can we do parking versus?
I think we're good.
The size of a single family home? I'd rather do parking.
Well, I think we're good because the city already allows 400 square. feet.
Okay.
So the city, by the city adopting that, like just like you do with the PUD standard.
Okay, maybe I misread that then. 'cause I-
No, that's-
You wanted
that's
to go with.
one of them, so.
No, no problem. No, I did. I'm in the county.
But parking is something that I also think is an easy lift, that our parking is very outdated in the LDC. And that to me is just easy a shift in it's the.
No, I was just gonna say, I think if we can get, or with the ones I have listed, we're at 9. So we have killed it. I'm not, I mean, if we get to 9 at that point, then.
So if the city is in a place where they're not comfortable passing the resolution for the $100,000 commitment, it's not huge to us.
Well, that, I think it makes it a different application.
Would the county have to supplement that additional
Yeah,
100,000?
you have to be able to show that you have the full match.
Okay.
So, yeah, you'll have to, what I will say, again, we talk about it, city council, when this was originally introduced a long time ago, but when I originally introduced this, I told them last year to make sure that they knew that $100,000 ask was coming, because of 20% of $1 million is $100,000 each. So this shouldn't be a earth-shattering proclamation today, but people, we can have short memories sometimes, but we can get into this budget too, and I think there's an easy way for the city to do that as we look at the budget. So, okay, so with that, we run through kind of the budget, and then we can jump into the IGA. Yeah.
Sure. You
So,
want me to-
yeah, you can turn this, you can stop share on this. So the budget you have in the packet, and I kind of made this a little bit cleaner, just easier to read last night. So here's the really good news. The really good news is that you don't need, beyond your current IGA between the city and county, it's sufficient enough with the commitment of 2A funds, the balance 2A funds, and the continued commitment from the county on the third, that you have an operating regional house. You cover operating expenses on a year-to-year basis. And in fact, you probably can even get some help in year 2, in that when you normally get when we start, which they'll need help with, is program administration. When you apply for those programs, they typically come with a short leash administrative kind of the first year or 2 to assist with administration, but after that, program will be self-sufficient. We don't know, but those programs also generate revenue through like loan down payment assistance is actually a loan application, and you actually generate money through the program. So that should be the program and the operating piece, because of the work that you did originally, establishing the housing director position, you're set on operating.
Okay.
So if you look, basically, the first half of this sheet, basically operating total, you can see what that budget looks like. Your operating total for year 1 is 120, and if you add an employee, it's about 177. So you're in great shape. Where you're not in great shape is if we decide to develop that. And that's the quagmire, right? Obviously, we did this whole process because we want to see units on the ground. The development committee is a very expensive, heavy piece and heavy lift, especially in the first couple of years without a dedicated funding. The good news is that if you're successful in what I just described in getting a door grant, that brings in $1 million and creates 50 to 70 units of housing that through that process, through sale, for instance, our regional housing authority, Crescent View, will bring 2% on the back end of every sale. That went back into the coffers of the regional housing authority. It would also leave you with a fund balance right now, and this needs a little bit of a update because the program's gone up to 1.1 million. But you have a fund balance of roughly about 500,000 to 600,000 after the first big housing project is done in 2025.
Okay.
So what that means, though, is which is probably, it's always at the bottom right, is the future revenue pool. So one is to continue to a contribution from the city, 70,000, which is the housing director position. It's to continue at least through 2025. $1,000 from the county. It is looking at the potential of the city contributing that 2A funding for the development of property. I know with the Laurel parcel, for instance, they might have some other priorities, but this is kind of starting to look at how do we start to shift. And again, when I said that city match of 100 and 300, that is that's the money that doesn't exist today that we need to come up with to make the delivery happen. But good news is, absent trying to build houses, you can do housing programming and operate a regional housing authority and administer a lottery like the Laurel parcel. That project comes up. You have everything set. So I think that was welcome, right?
No, go ahead.
Just so I understand a couple of these line items, maybe going back up under the development team committee, the project gap funding, is that like the Excel, is that like the electric gas one?
Yep.
What is that?
That's exactly what that is.
Excellent. And then county operating contribution, that's our current commitment to the housing director establishment.
Yeah, so I have a question on that one, on the housing 2A, the 70K, is that assuming the city's contribution and 2A contribution in one?
No, that's just this current one under the idea.
Okay, because the current one projected salaries a third, county, city, 2A,
But we might add,
but we can massage a little bit.
yeah, that was the 70 was a lot more reasonable. That's what they were giving right now. You know what that is? You know what that is because it's city and 2A.
It is, okay, all right, I just want to make sure. Verify.
That should probably read it. The goal here is that once if there's a valid initiative to fund this long term, these efforts, then the commitments on this, and again, Becky flies, she's out of the nest.
Okay, so this budget is inclusive of city and county contributions. And theoretically, if the city does not have the ability to contribute, the county will make
Well, I think let's cross that bridge. We have till September 1st to put together this budget. Like I said, last night, I wanted to come prepared to know that I had 1.4 in the back of my head to deliver it, and I needed to actually hash numbers. And so I was able to do that with the delivery. I still need, that draft I gave you does not have Territech's blessing or quite a few other things that need to go into it, but plus or minus 10%, 3.4.
Perfect.
This is great to see this, and yeah, I mean, it's sort of like some stuff to figure out, but
Yeah.
it's plausible.
No, I don't think it seems insurmountable.
Knocking wood. That makes a huge difference.
I'm hoping.
I've done a lot of work.
Do you have any sense of how oversubscribed the application's gonna be?
I think it's probably double if not triple. It's gonna be very, very.
Do you feel like you have enough going into the application to be competitive?
So the catalytic projects they funded, the minimum project had 5 qualified strategies. I believe that these are the only. I don't know if they actually funded, and I know the biggest one was 13, which is precedent. They had all the stuff that we had done for 6 years last summer, but I think that had 13 qualified strategies. But what was really disappointing, and I think they got politically spanked for it, was they based their decision on a number of qualified strategies. And they punished rural communities like the same counties and like my whole district. Because, for instance, I had students that don't have zoning codes. So they were like, so because of a couple of my communities in that zoning codes, I couldn't even do these qualified strategies. And they were like, oh. And I was like, this is the fourth part of the state in the housing movement. So I think they had a kind of a, anyways, and I understand why they did what they did have a link around, but I think they're gonna look with a little bit better of a lens of equity, I hope, coming up on this, because of the world.
They look at, like, look with them.
Is it? Okay. Yeah, there'll be a need section, but again, we'll have 7, if not 9. by the time this hits third. And we set out with 6, when we put in a planning grant, we set out with 6, because of the PUD amendment and the ADU stuff that annexes stuff we had. So, you know, it's been great.
So Jim, what's our next steps? We're not looking at doing this until a little further down the road, right?
The idea, the creation of it, yeah, not until you guys are comfortable with the budget number and city council proposes a budget number tonight. Then I'm comfortable recommending moving forward on the IGA, because creating something with only an executive director and 7 new bosses is not going to work at all. And also being able to incentivize any developers for any projects, or even like Jackie working with any local property owners who want to do something but don't know how, like her having no budget just makes it inert. So anyway, so today I imagine Michael will do a similar presentation at City Council. We'll see where that goes. What does make me nervous, but mainly not thanks to you, it doesn't make me nervous, but what makes me nervous is that the city doesn't know how much 2A funding will be left over. So I don't want the county to be shortchanged and have to subsidize the new regional housing authority for the next 2 years or a year until Jackie can run a sales tax, or until the housing authority can run a sales tax ballot initiative. So last week, Michael and I met with the city administrator and we went over 2A and like 2A ballot language and trying to like at least get some kind of decent projection on where it was, which Michael was able to do. Either or I could figure it out. So I have confidence in Michael's numbers, but I am worried that that the contribution that the 2A leftover could be 60 grand.
What I will say, and I understand that, what I will say to that is that, and I agree with you, Tim, but if you look at the operating expenses, yeah, we just have to be comfortable with where, I mean, the 119, the nice thing is that it, like, when we actually put this together, I was holding my breath looking at that budget. And so we're pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Just so the board is aware of
Sure.
that. And then for just thinking about that, so like obviously the goal is to receive the DOLA grant, but if we don't, what does the regional housing authority have to work with? And then if they run a sales tax ballot initiative and it fails, what does the regional housing authority have to work with? Because then it's just another forward-thinking thing of if the county and city want to continue to subsidize it and until there's more than just leftover 2A funding as a revenue source.
and I kind of purposely included this budget to show you what $400,000 per year. So this is the more expensive of the 3 sites as far as bringing that up. The school district site, this also has the most units. This would get you a billable 40 to 46 unit project at 400. So it's not like even without the DOLA grant, Jackie said in the water, but she can start to go into this. Now, what that does mean is we're going to probably need a lot more regional collaboration with the special district. And when you go to the bottom of this, you see that just in this one alone, the 2 special districts bring in $900,000 fees. We hope that they could potentially help with engineering, et cetera. For this housing opportunities. It just obviously not having that confidence. But it also puts the board together to make a case for, a revenue.
Yeah.
And more.
Yeah.
More. Now, move on.
And I'm sorry to everyone that I put on all of this, but it was just wasn't, comfortable without a budget, but then I'm very thankful for Jackie and Michael being able to put together, an operating budget, and then also the key thing. The budget. Again, if we have a 7-person new board and Jackie but no money to incentivize anything, we haven't done anything for the past year. All our efforts for the past year were not. So anyway, so I guess the two takeaways for the board to think about is your comfort on the numbers projected by Michael and Jackie, and then also thinking about we want the county representatives to be on the Regional Housing Authority Board. Those decisions don't have to be made now, but I would say within the next, well, the next regular meeting is the first Tuesday in August.
August 2nd.
August 2nd.
Two weeks from today.
Yeah, I mean,
But, and then after, I mean, we can also, I mean, the board
I
has
think if we.
the
if we have to
ability to
have,
call a special meeting.
Yeah, I think we have to have a special meeting for this only, because it has the potential to take up the bulk of the time on our agenda anyway, so if we want to have a meeting with just this as the topic, I wouldn't propose doing.
August 9th for, I mean, I would suggest is that you guys do a joint hearing.
With city and county.
Or we could do the 8th, and if we did it at 5 p.m.
We're gonna have a joint public commission.
Those days.
Then
10th will be here, or I mean, the 16th, I don't know if that's cutting things too close, or you.
we gotta do it by the 2nd.
Okay. So the 10th, 11th, or so. But also, I mean, it is going to be dependent. I mean, we can make that recommendation to city council tonight that the 10th, 11th, and 12th, we need to hold a joint meeting to approve this. Depending on how it goes tonight.
I want to avoid the
The what? Oh, okay. Okay.
And I mean, I think we can, 19 if you want here, gonna be here, but
Yeah.
Did you see how the trade is?
So sorry, I didn't bring it up to the already, right?
I mean, we could do great. I mean, there's potential to have this on your regular board meeting on the second week. And we can do something the third, fourth, or fifth. For
we could do I'll make, the second is a really bad day.
well, we do want to here.
The work now kind of gives us a lot of ditches in our district for them to bring in the end, so I think good when we come back. We have mine shafts.
I was gonna say, yeah, we got a new mine shaft for the 11th one.
Yeah.
Thanks. So much middle right. Well, better. Anyhow.
So Jamie, you
Bye,
think,
bye.
do you think it's possible for us to meet on the 2nd of August? Should we have a work session between now and then?
Well, we have a bug for it. Oh, yeah. I think that the board has plenty of time to think through these things, and my fear is that whatever proposal or changes we bring to city council, they will be unprepared for it. And it's just the way it is.
Well, I guess, yeah, I understand what you're saying. The way I look at it in the next presentation of the council is that the IG, there's really only two things. There's three considerations that they have to consider at the council level. One is they stick with the current commitment to the IGA that they have with the funding. The second is to put the remaining balance into a regional housing authority, which
Up to
up to of which is not obligated to the tourism board, which per the ballot language was made forward. So that's the intent. So it's not a huge, that's not a huge ask. And then the final one is whether or not to match the Fuller grant. And my opinion of that is, you know, they're being, I'm asking the county to shoulder a bigger burden of that. So their ask of 100,000 is sticking with what we originally. And the reason, and then actually, sorry, we should probably clarify why we've asked that. And the reason for that is that it's kind of like the trade between the county and the city, and that if the city commits their 2A funds, the county is willing to put in a big match. And so I think, you know, when we talk about fairness and evenness, that's a pretty good compromise is when everyone's not happy, right? So, you know, we're all kind of a little bit.
And yeah. And I will say, just so you're right around where I am also reaching out, climax, some kind of contribution. They contribute some thousand pages.
Thank you. I don't know that I have any other questions.
So those, I mean, so for the board to consider over the next few weeks, where it comes to terms with, would be who you want on the regional housing authority board, and then if you're comfortable with the proposal of a $400,000 county 300, okay, $300,000 contribution to the regional housing authority, which I can get you different scenarios on if it's ARPA or other or general fund transfers for that.
And I think that 300 would only come due if we were successful.
Okay.
I think both the city and county on those matching. And the thing is, you're committing, just to be clear, already working. You're committing this year to the $300,000 match, but it's not, that match is not due until 2024. So it's a 2024 budget.
Okay, that's like.
That makes sense.
So just be fair on that, and you'll know by 2024, by January 1st, whether or not you do the grant.
And if we don't receive the grant, then there's,
I think at that point, you have an adopted board. If you don't receive the grant, then that board responsibility is to come back to you with budget requests. And they should be coming back with the budget request. I'm basically putting the board's first project out to you right now. If we're not successful, that's the whole reason we created this board, is to have a development review committee. Certainly, I am more than happy to continue to work with that development review board. I mean, you do have, with these infill sites in the school, and if the school district participates, these 3 infill sites is $3 million worth of property assets. So it's not like their board is starting with nothing. It's just, they're starting with assets that need a lot of leverage to make them viable. But that's still, those land assets are still huge, and we're gonna allow for these conversations to progress.
okay. So the work that we do now going into the regional housing authority, if we're not successful with door grant, it's not like that. At that point, like Jackie still has room to move forward with some. With her board.
Yeah, and that's the point of having a board, right? It's like now you have, instead of this falling back to the commissioners and falling back to the council, you're like, okay, we have this huge problem. Keep,
The only other thing I didn't see in the slide presentation was the community guidelines and then because of regional housing. So I just want to clarify that because I think that there's some misunderstanding about that. It was referenced in the editorial that we haven't adopted community guidelines either, but we're not going to. Okay.
and there's no point because you adopt them by reference to the land use code, i.e. developers will use those, but the board that is responsible for the administration is the regional housing authority.
Okay.
And I can just tell you from firsthand experience, it's a pain to not do it this way because we, the city of the town of Crescent, we adopted our guidelines. They didn't exactly line up with the regional housing authority, but we contracted with the regional housing authority for our lotteries. And so there's always like this, oh, there's this one little clause in paragraph 2A that doesn't align. Because and it's like, is it, and it matters to an applicant who's buying a house, it's like, do I get 2 lottery tickets or do I get 3? In interpretation. Then I have to go in front of, my council to get an interpretation of lottery tickets, whereas it could have been done in that.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, there's no problem with presenting proposed drafts and that kind of stuff that have already been worked on. But
Which I think is what we did,
Yeah.
right? Give our preference of what we would prefer to see, and we can analyze, but it's not.
Not
our
binding on
responsibility to adopt those as well.
And you will have a board member that take all that knowledge to that board. Okay.
Okay, great. I don't have anything else, sorry. Okay, I don't have anything else. Tim, is there anything else on this?
No, we'll let you, unless you guys come to council tonight, we'll let you know how it goes and then we can for sure get the next meeting booked. Because after Christian, after city council's attorney provided their feedback on the idea, I have no comments on it. Other than I disagree with you about term limits, we're gonna stick with Chris's proposal for term limits.
And her comment was just, I think, the readability comment, whereas my comment back on that one. We had, that was direct input from the elected officials on the term limits. I'm not opening up another. We have another doing work with this. I understand her comments, they make sense, but that's just the way you put it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm good. Okay.
Do you have any concerns from Christian's people?
No, because I knew it went final, but nothing surprising.
Okay.
And nothing more than the secretary.
Then once you guys decide on the budget numbers, that will go into the IGA for the.
And so, well, let me ask this, because we're going, that's comfortable, is it an okay statement from the night to say that the BOCC is comfortable with the current budget as proposed tonight?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I
Say comfortable, not approved.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, I don't have any heartburn over that. I don't think that
And also, I mean, I was planning on going to the council. I kind of want to hear stuff first.
Okay, great.
It's a little for, well, 750 is the, because they, for some reason, do all their housekeeping and apartment reports.
What is your title?
Think of all the usual stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have a Zoom. What is your email? Well, yeah, but what is?
City executive.
Okay,
Well, great, thank you so much, this is,
okay. I don't think it's interesting that comes from Alma.
Oh,
And
never
we
mind.
can move towards, like, if we need to add a work session here, that's it's not, I don't know if it's an issue for any of us. Just have a work session, case nailed on. Council tonight, or anything that we want to include going forward in the DOLA application or the letter of intent. Have the resolutions with the budget commitment completed before September 1st? Yes, okay, so we'll want to make sure that those are on one of our meetings in August.
okay, then we do that, your second meeting in August. We will need to do it in your second meeting in August because,
The 16th,
And I'll be able to figure out a way to get up here. I'll be in Rocky Point. I'm going to the fair. The
Oh,
real
nice.
oldest fair.
Yeah.
No. I'm gonna get a free log on that. We gotta go through a redesign there. Contractor on board for them, we have to get public input for them before the contract is. But, you know, so we'll go there.
Okay, so August 16th, there's another Tuesday in August 30th.
We'll have the nebulous, we should be about and resolution of support.
And the letter of support. for the 16th. Okay. Great. I don't have any questions or anything else. Thank you for coming today
Yeah.
and for this presentation.
No problem. We're almost there.
All right, anything else on regional housing authority before we move on?
No, I do not.
Thanks. Next on our list is a discussion on the status of the Community Justice Center. We have received an update or progress report from our project management team, dynamic program management. Commissioner Beeler, if you want to just walk us through really quickly this project update and progress report from her, from Colin.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just, I think, highlight the two main things. This is like super new, but we have the final city council vote on participation for that 5 million contribution. They have a guaranteed minimum square footage. And we have guaranteed a maximum price for them.
Okay.
And they have committed to contribute this 5 million in some form. Developing IGA with us. For the space and so like all the terms of their participation and occupancy of the building, and have that in hand. So that we have that in COP process, so that we have that documented, that we have that 5 million contribution. So, you know, I think that was a big uncertainty that is resolved. And then the other is we have some initial schematic design at the around 50,000 square foot. This is a roughly 10% cut from where things have been earlier in the process, but with cost escalation. 50,000 is where the design team, 2,000 square feet is the size of the building that has been painful to get down there. But I think we're in a pretty good place. As Connie Canada and Bergman said at the bottom, I think then looking forward to the next steps, things are going to start moving fast again. We should have a 100% schematic design next week or two. They say August 4th. And then 3 weeks to price out that initial 100% schematic design. And also, you know, that will be the next sort of reality check to get that initial pricing back. Hopefully, we have enough open contingency and we can observe it enough with that reduction to 50,000 square foot. If we've gone in to try to price 56,000 square feet, we would have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
To get it into our budget. But so end of August, begins within that point. And then sorry, jumping around a little bit on the order of DPM's update, continue to work through figuring out the large team. And the next thing that works is the commissioning agent, which is the entity that's sort of like our inspector is a strong word, but it's the person that works for us, not the constructor or designer, to ensure that things actually get built the way they respect the construction documents. And a part of that commissioning will be to help advise us on the environmental performance installed, and that was part of that whole grant. Supplement funding. So I think that's it. But I mean, yeah, sort of, it's a big step to get to that point, of being close to going to press.
Go ahead.
We'll just say a tangential update, they're doing the punch checklist right now with the current Lake County Jail on the renovations that were just done, so. We have a full facility again.
Very minor disruption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you? Maybe never end.
Actually, one of the things is the heads up, I think, with that 50,000 square foot level, I think the district attorney space is probably the one remaining significant entry point. Just so you're aware, should probably anyone in the hallway.
Yeah.
Who's unhappy at us, and we'll need to make a decision whether whether the district attorney's office will need to retain space. Like, will that new space they have, use as the center, sort of more like when the days they're in court, space for them to work in a safe, secure area, or is it there like new offices? We don't know that yet.
Will it be presented to us in the public forum, or how will that? I think it might be, I think it might be interesting to.
I'll go ask that.
Okay.
And I think we have at least one more public town hall sort of identified and agreed to by the design team. So that seems like that would be an appropriate
Okay.
moment. I mean, we might go for the pricing back before we define stuff we can't afford.
Right. Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, actually, I mean, public, but if anyone wants to see what the current plan looks like, it's right here.
Wonderful. I don't. I appreciate your work on that and having those conversations. Last time that you wanted to add? Chris, anything? No? Okay. Cool. I don't have anything either. Thank you. All right, so we have the liquor license for the renewal of the liquor store.
Yes. Looks like everything is there.
Okay, did this require a public hearing? No. Okay. We don't need for renewal, we're written on that. Okay, so,
My experiences.
yeah. So, looks to me like everything is good. We've received like no complaints or no feedback or public comment rooms. No. Okay, I don't have any questions. Of you. Okay,
Let's go ahead.
yeah.
Move that we approve the renewal of the next liquor store license.
I'll second. Any further discussion?
On here,
Nothing. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, moving on to your report. So Cindy, I saw that you sent us minutes, but I haven't had time to review them yet. Okay. But so with that, I will move that we approve the annual report from the treasurer, bills and payroll for pay periods 17, July 1st, and 15th, and table the minutes of May 6th, June 6th, June 20th, June 21st, June 23rd, June 28th, July 5th, July 13th.
second.
Any further discussion?
I just say on the minutes, I had some like very minor comments.
Okay.
I sent it to you before.
It doesn't matter.
I didn't
Okay,
get,
that
I didn't get
makes-
the track changes
Okay.
yet, but
Alright, great. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
I,
All right. We do not have any members of the public remaining with us today. There's nobody left on Zoom, nobody left in the room. I feel as though we don't have any further business to address as we've gotten to the end of our agenda for today. So with that, we will adjourn today at 12:55 p.m. Thank you all.